we have our sex hormones, which I'm going to go into detail what those are. And then we have our stress hormones. And so these three, can you see that? It's kind of, I can't get my computer any closer. Sorry. Basically, they're in a triangle, which is what I want you guys to understand. So, and if any of them get disrupted, so think of them on a 3D plane. If one goes up, the other two get affected. If the other one goes up, so you get what I mean? They are very delicately related. And in the middle of these three hormones is blood sugar. So we're going to talk a little bit about how keeping your blood sugar balance can impact every single part of these hormones. Sit back down because I don't know that you're going to see that well. So I'm assuming everyone's heard of the thyroid. Everyone knows about sex hormones, which include progesterone, estrogen. Those are the two main players that we're going to talk about today. And those pretty much control your menstrual cycle. So, and those hormones are going to change throughout different times of the month. And this is what it becomes a little bit more challenging as a practitioner or even as a woman. You know, our hormone values are not the same. Like day one of your period, which is when you start bleeding, you might feel totally different. Even just normal balanced you might be different the day that you start bleeding versus 2 days before you bleed or versus when you're ovulating. And I think it's really important for women and moms and to understand what your normal is throughout your cycle. So when I work with my patients, I'll have them start, and if you guys don't do this already, I highly encourage you to get a period app and start tracking. Okay, my period started on this Tuesday, you know, I felt really good mentally this day, or I had a lot of energy, or my sex drive was really high, or I had a headache, or it's a great way to kind of chart your symptoms and understand what your energy and your flow is like. And I work with a lot of business owners or women that manage a lot of stuff. And we talk about, you know, they're like, oh, the week before my period, I can't get anything done. I'm so scatterbrained. I'm tired. I'm this, I'm that. And we're trying to fix that. But in the meantime, we might want to look out at our calendars and say, hey, you know what? That week, I'm not going to be feeling so hot. I maybe shouldn't schedule 50 things, or I maybe should schedule some extra downtime in that week, or I should take a nap, or I should, say no to the extra stuff. And it's a little easier during COVID to say no to extra stuff, but maybe don't do 15 Zooms, or, say no to things that drain you during that week where your energy's drained. And maybe you start to realize, oh, on day 5 of my cycle, from day 55 to day 14, I feel awesome. I have great energy. I really want to be social. I'm creative. So it's kind of cool to track your cycle, knowing like how your brain's going to be, how your body's going to be, and kind of maybe try to plan your life around it. Now, I say that meaning I know some women struggle with irregular periods. And so when that's happening, if you're not getting a cycle at the same time every month or typically a normal cycle should be anywhere from 26 to 30 days long. So that's from the start of one period to the start of the next. And when we talk about the actual flow of your period, that's when you start bleeding. So the period length is the days that you bleed, and then your cycle length is how long in between each cycle. And period length, the bleeding time can vary. Some women bleed for 2 days, some women bleed for 7 days. And again, it's just good to know what your body's normal is. And it's also important to know that your normal might be one way in your 20s. It might be another way after you've had kids, and it might change when you go into perimenopause. And then obviously when you go into menopause, you're not going to have a cycle anymore. What's general? Does anyone want to show of hands? How many of you guys are moms? Are we all moms? We're all moms here? Everyone's mom? Anyone here yes. Menopausal or stop getting a period? I'm trying to see.
Yes.
Do you guys want to use the chat?
At least one.
I'm waiting, please.
Waiting for menopause.
I'm in menopause.
So in that perimenopause phase, you're in menopause. Okay, so a couple of you guys have gone through. Jillian, my period's forcibly stopped. Yeah, so there's all kinds of different ways it can look like, but I think it's important to know that your normal might change at different points in your life. So my point here is that this is a really good way to get in touch with how your body is cycling every month. And thank you guys here for that's great if you can pop into the chat, because I can't really see all you guys at the top. What I was going to say is it's really important to know, again, what your normal is with your periods and with all of when I teach workshops, I talk about would love more about hormones. Yeah, we'll talk about hormones and menopause. There's a few, I call them body benchmarks. There's a few markers that I think are really important as a woman or as just a human to know what's going on with your health. So for women, your periods are a huge marker or indicator of what's going on in your health. If they're really irregular, if you've got really bad PMS, if there's something going on, your body is like screaming, hey, there's something not right, I need some help. Your sleep is another really big indicator. So, if you're not getting good sleep, these are just things that I want you to start thinking about. Just become aware of what your normal is or what you would like your normal to be. So periods, sleep, your energy levels throughout the day. Do you have good energy in the morning? Is your energy best at 3 o'clock? Is it best at night? Do you get a really big dip in the afternoon? You have to take a nap, or just knowing what your energy patterns look like. Your bowel movements are another big indicator of what's going on with your body. And I'll touch on this a little bit. If you're not having regular bowel movements, this is a sign that your liver is going to have a harder time breaking down some of the bad hormones that we don't want. I'll get back to that in a minute. But so periods, sleep, energy levels, bowel movements, your appetite. So knowing like, hey, is it normal for me to be hungry in the morning? Is it normal for me to not be hungry? Am I really hungry at night? Just knowing what your appetite looks like throughout the day is just another way to kind of see what your system is doing. And then what? I'm missing one. And your sex drive. So your libido. Like, have you thought about sex in the last 6 months? Are you thinking about it all the time? Like, do you have a partner? Are you masturbating? A healthy sex drive is kind of important. It tells me when I'm a practitioner, if someone's like, oh, I have no interest in sex, I haven't thought about sex in years, that tells me that all of their hormone levels are probably a little bit low. So it's good to have and we're going to talk about this more, but sex is a really great way to calm your body's nervous system down. So it's a healthy practice, whether you have a partner or not. So I'm just going to pop into my acupuncture talks about, yeah, poop. Jillian just put like, bowel movements are so important. If you don't look at them, please look at them. You want, some of you guys are patients of mine, but so I ask like, what do they look like? Are you having gas? Are they formed? Are they runny? It's a really important marker of your health. So those are kind of things that when you're starting to look at whether your hormones are imbalanced, those are all things that I'm asking about, because you can have issues in all of those kind of benchmark areas that can signal to a practitioner, or that you can start to learn that signal to you that hormones might be a little bit off. So, all right, we talked a little bit about periods. So I'm going to touch on menopause while I'm still on it. What about medications that lower your sex drive? Yeah, so that's a great question. There are a lot of medications that can lower sex drive. So any of the antidepressant medications, SSRIs, a lot of anti-anxiety meds, they use a lot of SSRIs for lowering anxiety, but some of their side effects can be low sex drive. But I often find that in a lot of patients who've had anxiety for a long time or depression for a long time, they may have an underlying what's called adrenal fatigue issue, which I'm going to explain. And sometimes when I'm working with patients, one of the things that tells me that they have adrenal fatigue is that their sex drive is low. So meds can cause low sex drive, but sometimes the low sex drive might have been there before you were on the meds. And I don't know your particular story, but if your sex drive was fine, that you went on the medication and it lowered, then most likely the med might be. And there are some ways around that, depending on, if the medication is really helping you and you want to stay on it. There are certain herbs, certain nutrients, certain things that you can do. And I can't speak, this is not a general thing. I'd have to know your specific case on this, but there are things you can do to work around that. Or, if you're thinking that the medication isn't really working, or that side effect is something you don't want to deal with, there are other options for depression and anxiety medications. A lot of patients come to me wanting to get off of those meds. I am proponent of whatever works best for you. I want women to feel healthy and feel their best. So if you need a baby dose of an anti-anxiety med, awesome. If you want to do something natural, that's also awesome. A little bit about me. I'm pro whatever makes you feel good. So someone had a question about fibroids. So you asked, how do they impact hormones? So actually it's your hormones that probably caused your fibroids. So in a lot of cases, and this is kind of ties back into bowel movement. So we talked about estrogen and progesterone as being the two kind of major players in the female hormone cycle. And so the first half of your cycle, for the first 10 days or so, all of your hormone levels are low. And if you guys Google female hormone cycle and click on images, you can see here's what estrogen does, here's what progesterone does. But so estrogen is typically pretty low, and then right before ovulation, it will peak, and then it drops off for the rest of the cycle. Progesterone will rise a little bit before ovulation, and then it will rise a lot in the second half of the cycle, and it will fall. So in the first half of the cycle, you're more estrogen dominant. In the second half of your cycle, you're more progesterone dominant. This is a long-winded answer of me saying that most cases of fibroids are when women have too much estrogen and not enough progesterone to back it up. And estrogen, so throughout your monthly cycle, your body's making hormones. And then when the estrogen is supposed to come down, your liver is supposed to break them down. So that's kind of this monthly cycle that happens. The body makes the hormones, the liver breaks them down, and we excrete them out through the bowel movement. So as I mentioned, if you're not having regular bowel movements and your body continually makes estrogen, it might not be breaking it down. And so the other issue with estrogen is that, we make it as a normal part of our healthy monthly function. It's a normal thing for us to have estrogen. But in today's world, we also get exposed to what we call exogenous estrogen. So there's estrogen in, if you buy meat or eat out meat that has hormones in it, a lot of chicken, a lot of beef, they inject estrogen into that meat to make the breasts bigger. So you're getting estrogen, like Chick-fil-A, for example. Who doesn't love Chick-fil-A? But Chick-fil-A is going to cause your estrogen levels to go up. So diet is a huge factor when it comes to fibroids. So if you're eating a lot of foods that are high in estrogen and you're not having regular bowel movements and your liver's not pulling things out, you're going to end up in what we call an estrogen dominant state. And so typically in about 95% of fibroid cases, they're caused from too much estrogen. So, and you can get, obviously a lot of women will have the fibroids removed or have a hysterectomy. When they get really large, that's usually the smart thing to do. If they're small and you've just been diagnosed with them, there are really wonderful dietary changes. You can speed up the liver metabolism to break down estrogen a lot faster, and you can actually get rid of fibroids, which is super. Okay, menopause has changed sleep patterns. Okay, I'm going to talk about sleep in a little bit. But yeah, so that's what's going into your body can often have excess estrogens that your liver has to break down. There's also what you put on your body. So a lot of fragrances, a lot of lotions, a lot of like those Glade plugins, they are full of what we call, I'm drawing a blank for the term. They're other estrogen or estrogenic compounds. So if you are putting a lot of products on your body, you want to start to look at the ingredients. And if you want a great resource is called the Environmental Working Group, ewg.org. You can type in your makeup or your whatever product you're using. You can type that in and it'll give it a score and it'll tell you, okay, this lotion is super safe. There's not going to be a lot of estrogen producing compounds in there, or this lotion is maybe not so great. You might not want to be using it every day. Maybe use this every now and then. So it's really important to know what's going in your body and what's going on your body, because these can affect particularly your estrogen. And so on the same point, so a lot of these chemicals that are going on your body, as I said, they can upregulate or they can put more estrogen in the system that the body then has to break down. But it can also start to affect your thyroid. So a lot of these chemicals can bind to the thyroid and can affect thyroid function. So thyroid is another one of those master players, one of the master hormones. It controls metabolism. It controls bowel movements. So the actual, like the daily rhythm of your bowel movements, thyroid is responsible for that. It controls hair, it controls skin, it controls nails. It's responsible for weight gain, weight loss. It's the main hormone for that. It's also responsible for keeping your body temperature normal. So thyroid does a lot. It's super important. Probably one of the number one reasons that women come to see me is for hypothyroidism or something called Hashimoto's, where the body starts to attack the thyroid. And so this means their thyroid will underfunction. It can cause a whole host of issues. What I'm seeing lately and what's kind of concerning me a little bit is, so when your thyroid is even just subtly underfunctioning, it can cause your temperature to go down. So, and this is something you can kind of check yourself. If you're, we're all getting temperatures taken a lot if you're going places. If your temperature tends to run low, like 96, 97 consistently, that is kind of a sign that your thyroid might be underfunctioning. Now, when I say underfunctioning, you might not have,
That's like
What'd you
freaking me
say?
out because like my temperature is like consistently 95.8. And my doctors have never mentioned that, but
Oh,
every time I get like go to a doctor's appointment, they're like, "Why is your temperature so low?" And I'm like, "I don't know. You're the doctor."
yeah. So that's usually from low thyroid. And what I was going to say is oftentimes your thyroid might test normal. So the main screening hormone that they check for thyroid is called TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. And this is a hormone that your brain makes to tell your thyroid to pump out T4, and then T4 will get converted to T3. But so the reference range is maybe 0.4 to 4.5. I like to see TSH for a healthy woman, and this, certain cases can change this, but usually around 1 is healthy and normal. So if your thyroid or TSH is like 3.5, that's within range. So they're going to tell you your thyroid's fine. But if you have a TSH of 3.5 and your temperature is consistently low, your thyroid's probably not working strong enough. So working hard enough. So, and what I was going to say is that our body temperature is 98.6 for a reason. We have that body temperature to keep certain viruses and bacteria and other things that aren't supposed to live with us from living in us. So it's why when we, like, our body gets a fever, when we have, get a virus or we get sick, that helps. The fever kills whatever's living in there, but our body existing at 98.6 kind of protects us from a lot of viral infections and bacterial infections. But so thyroid's super important. It keeps you from getting sick. If your thyroid is low or your temperature is low, even just 1 degree, it can make you more susceptible to a lot of viral infections. And I say this, given COVID, and COVID is a cold virus. A lot of patients with hypothyroid are constantly getting colds. They're getting sick all the time. And that's one of the symptoms that makes me think, you should probably check your thyroid. You get colds all the time. But it's literally because your body just doesn't have the temperature that's high enough. So so I encourage you guys, another thing to be checking daily or checking often is, what is your temperature like? Is it consistently running in the 95s and the 96 and the 97? And what that means is you might not notice if you get a fever. It takes a lot more metabolic energy for you to get a fever. And I think a lot of people, and COVID aside, like I have a lot of patients that have what we call stealth pathogens, something like Epstein-Barr virus or Lyme disease, and they don't feel like they have a fever. They don't feel achy because their temperature is so low. So they're not having, typically when we spike a temperature, we don't feel good. You have a fever, like, but that's your body killing things. So anyway, so I mentioned this because it's another sign that hormones are potentially not quite right. Okay, I'm going to look in some of the questions right now. So, okay, we talked about fibroids. Menopause has changed sleep patterns. Yes, so sleep. So when I talked about thyroid kind of governing metabolism, thyroid can affect sleep. And when you go through menopause, typically most women, about 95% of women, when they go through menopause, their thyroid starts to underfunction for just those couple years when things are changing. And typically in a healthy woman, it will go back up. So that can be a thyroid issue when you go through menopause and your sleep patterns have changed. It can also be a stress issue. So, and it depends on what sleep pattern you're having. If you're falling asleep fine and waking up at 2 or 3 a.m., that is typically a sign that your adrenals are in overdrive. So your body is kind of stuck in stress mode. And I'm going to answer these questions and then I'll get into talking about the adrenal glands. But so if you're falling asleep fine and you're waking up in the middle of the night with a hot flash, or waking up at 3 and you can't fall back asleep, that's typically a sign that there's something going on with your adrenals. If you're having a hard time falling asleep and you're waking up and you're tossing and turning and you're having hot flashes all throughout the night, that's usually a thyroid issue. It can either be too much or too little. But so basically, when you go through menopause, that little triangle thing, your sex hormones take a huge dip. So typically it's easier for your adrenal hormones or your stress hormones to kind of go into overdrive. And sometimes thyroid goes into overdrive or sometimes it crashes. There's usually a change that happens in menopause that will affect a lot of those body benchmarks that I talked about: sleep, energy, bowel movement. A lot of that stuff can change because you've had a cycle every month for how many years, and then it goes away. So the body takes a minute to kind of readjust. And stress will make menopause 1,000 times worse. The body is a little bit, like, as I said, when you're in menopause, you're more sensitive to stress. So if you're kind of like, and menopausal women will tell you that they're irritable, they're cranky. For those of you that, I'm sure you've been through this, like, you're moody, like things get on your nerves really easily. This can also be when you're PMSing, but when hormones change, it can affect your mood big time. You can feel like you have a short fuse. You can feel like you want to kill your family, like you want to kill your husband or your partner. So menopause is going to affect a lot of things, and sleep is a big one. Okay, let's see. How does excessive cortisol levels result? Okay, Chris, I'm gonna answer these other questions and then I'll come back to that one, because I'm gonna talk about that with adrenal stuff. And then, all right, I've almost always had a lower sex drive, but I started randomly getting a super high sex drive. Oh, that's good. And bad migraines. Okay, so you started your sex drive increased, but your migraines. Um, so I don't necessarily think something is wrong. That's Jennifer with the it sounds like something changed. Quickie, you have PCOS. Okay, so for you guys who don't know, PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. Are you, Jennifer, you might be someone we might want to talk afterwards. As they're definitely related, the migraines and the change in your sex drive. Migraines are almost 80%, they're almost always hormone related. There can be other things, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. Sometimes migraines are a sign that things are just changing. I want to ask you if you're on the pill or if you're on meds, because sometimes that can be a sign that maybe what you're taking your body doesn't like. So we can come back to that, Jennifer, or you can also, guys, I do free 15-minute consults. If you have specific questions about your health and want to see if working with me is, or I can just kind of chat with you a little bit, you can call my office and schedule one. And Jennifer, I would say that you probably are someone we should have a quick chat because, like I said, I think they are related. And, endocrinologists, some of them are wonderful. They tend to not be as open. They don't think out of the box a lot. But I sometimes when I work with patients, I'll call them and I'll say, hey, you know what? I think this is related. We maybe need to change something up. So anyways, okay. So Barbara, I recently lost some of my hair. Suddenly swelling went away with, and suddenly lost weight. Temp was 97.4. So hair loss is definitely something that can either be, well, it could be any of the hormone stuff, but it can be thyroid stuff. Barbara, did you say you have arthritis as well? It came on at the same time as the hair loss? And your temp is 97.4. I would actually, thyroid might be related because of your temp being low, but I would, I don't know all the specifics for your case. Is that you, Barbara?
So what happened was, it recently, like say 2 weeks ago, the swelling I usually have on my fingers was just suddenly gone, and my pajamas were too big, and I noticed that my hair, I noticed my hair often, and my temperature has been 97.4 for like 2 weeks.
Is that normal for you or abnormal for you?
So that
Is 97.4 a normal temperature for you?
more like 98.3.
Yeah, you probably should get your thyroid checked. I was going to say you probably should. I diagnose a lot of Lyme disease. I would want to rule that out with you and some other viral things. But yeah, you should probably get some lab work done and have your thyroid checked.
Yeah, my Lyme disease test was, the first was positive, but when they broke it down, I was off by 1 point, so then they said it was negative.
You had 4 bands positive?
If you have to have 5 to be a yes, I had 4.
Yes, but you had 4. Oh, you probably have Lyme. Not to scare you, but that's what the CDC says. But if you're having those symptoms and you had 4 Lyme bands, there's a high chance that Lyme is that, because what you're describing, the hair loss, the sudden weight loss, and the arthritis, that's pretty consistent with a Lyme diagnosis. I would maybe go see someone who's a Lyme, and I'm happy to chat with you, off like at another time, but you probably want to go see a doc who's prolific in Lyme disease. Do you have a primary care?
Yeah, I do. I'm primary care.
Yeah, you might want to go see someone who kind of specializes in Lyme, because I would diagnose you with Lyme with 4 bands positive and those symptoms. I mean, I haven't taken your whole case, but that's Lyme disease doesn't always show up positive, the 5 bands. And there's some other tests that you can run that kind of can look at your immune system to see how your immune system is functioning.
My immune system is boo.
Yeah, and Lyme disease can do that. It can kind of take a major toll on your immune system.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy to chat with you if you want to book in for a call, or Dr. Alan Weiss. He's a holistic doc. He is an MD. He treats a lot of Lyme. I can give you some other names offline if you want to
Oh,
ask, but I would probably go down that avenue more with what your symptoms are.
thank you.
So you're very welcome. All right, I'm going to answer Chris's question about how does excessive cortisol result from chronic stress, influence hormones. So we're going to talk about so I talked about thyroid, I talked about sex hormones. I'm going to talk about your adrenal or your stress hormones. So your adrenal glands are little glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they pump out our stress hormones. The two major ones are cortisol and adrenaline. And these are so when our brain, our amygdala gets signaled, it will trigger a cascade of hormones that will eventually end up in the adrenal glands pumping out cortisol and adrenaline, which are the hormones that help our body deal with stress. So let's say that, as we're sitting here, a lion runs into my office and I'm trying to run from it. I'm going to need cortisol and adrenaline so I can get up and run and, flee or, run away from the situation. So, and our bodies were designed to respond to stress in acute ways, right? So, our brain signals this flood of adrenaline and cortisol so that we can get up and run. And what happens is the breath rate will increase, the heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, you get more blood flow to the skeletal muscles so you can run. But it also shuts off digestion, it shuts off hormone production, it shuts off basically anything that happens in the interior part of the body and activates everything that allows you to run and fight. So when we're free from the stress, so let's say if something was chasing me, once I get away from it, all of those hormones are supposed to calm down, and the cortisol is supposed to go back to the brain, and it says to the brain, hey brain, we're safe, you can turn off further production of these hormones and we can chill out now. So there's kind of this off button that exists in the lower part of I would call it the HPA axis. It exists in your hypothalamus. So the brain will turn off, and then you can go back to relax mode, where digestion will start working again, where sex drive can turn on, where your hormones can be made, where all of that internal organ stuff can start working again. So, like I said, we're designed to be able to respond to stress and then chill out. But what happens when we're under chronic stress, or when the stress button keeps getting pushed over and over and over and over again, and 2020 is a perfect example for that. This entire year we've been, oh my God, stress, stress, stress. This is happening. This is happening. This is happening. What will happen is the body will kind of wisen up, and it'll say, well, she's turned the stress response on. I could turn it off, but I'm pretty sure she's just going to turn it right back on in 10 minutes. So I might as well just leave it on. So the body doesn't like to make anything, any hormones or any signaling receptors or any molecules if it doesn't have to. So it will actually stop making the receptor that is your off button. So that's the receptor that the cortisol, you said the cortisol runs like a Ferris. Your cortisol will bind to this off receptor to turn things off, but your body will stop making that receptor. So now you get stuck in stress mode. You're stuck in fight flight. And 2020 has kind of kept us in that way. But I think before 2020, a lot of my patients would come in and they would say, I feel like I can't turn off. I'm super anxious. I go to yoga, I get massages, I do all these stress reducing things, but my body won't relax. And it's because you don't make enough of that receptor. And what happens, so when you're stuck in this, you can function this way for a certain period of time. Some people it's 6 months, some people it's 2 years, some people it's 10 years, some people it's 2 weeks. It depends on kind of how strong your constitution is. But so eventually, our body is pumping out cortisol and adrenaline, and we're in go mode. And when we're in this go mode or the fight flight mode, you're spending cortisol, cortisol is a very, I like to call it a metabolically expensive molecule. It takes a lot to build cortisol. So I like to think of it as kind of your body's currency. So when we're sleeping or we're resting, we're building cortisol. When you're in fight flight, or you're running, or you're working, or you're doing anything, you're spending cortisol. And so just like with money, if you spend more than you produce, you will eventually run into a situation where you're in a deficit, right? And so our bodies are kind of kind to us. We can drink a cup of coffee, we can push through, we can do things that our body will say, okay, we'll give you a line of credit. We don't actually have that energy, but we will allow you to keep functioning on fumes. And so your body kind of starts to go into this cortisol deficit. And this can happen for a time. Like I said, at some point, the body's bank will say, I'm sorry, I'm not loaning you any more money. And this is when people will start to get chronic fatigue, we'll start to see fibromyalgia, you'll start to see like the body starts to break down. And this is when you can be more susceptible to things like Lyme disease or chronic infections or thyroid. This is just, systems just start failing. So I just did a podcast episode earlier. I was talking about this, that the most basic way to think about this is you really want to be saving more than you're spending when it comes to energy. So anytime you sleep, anytime you rest, anytime you have sex, anytime you meditate, you are going to be building cortisol, which is the hormone that helps your body deal with stress. It's the hormone that helps you heal. Everyone's probably heard of a steroid, right? Of prednisone, or if you get a really bad, if you hurt your knee, you've got pain somewhere that you can't get to go away, they'll give you a steroid shot, which is synthetic cortisol. So it's what your body should be using to fix itself. But when you get into these low adrenal states, the body doesn't have enough to fix it. Wait, I was trying to answer Chris's. So the way that excessive cortisol levels and chronic stress, so initially you have excessive cortisol, but what will happen is over time, cortisol levels will start to dip. And when cortisol levels dip and you still have stress, the body will say, okay, crap, there's a stressor. We don't have enough cortisol. We don't even have any, credit for cortisol, but we have adrenaline. And adrenaline is very cheap. The body can always make adrenaline. So the body will say, okay, I'm going to start pumping out a ton of adrenaline instead of cortisol plus adrenaline. When you have cortisol and adrenaline, you feel really good. You feel as if you've just run, 5 miles, like a really good 5 miles, and you've had caffeine and you're going to take on the day. When you have just adrenaline, you feel as if you've drank 15 cups of coffee after no sleep for a night. You feel jittery, you feel anxious. So this can often be the cause. So a lot of you guys, there was a question earlier about anxiety meds. I find a lot of women get put on anxiety meds when really what they had was adrenal fatigue. Their cortisol was so tapped out and they were overproducing adrenaline. And so the anxiety meds might help a little bit, but if you're someone who was diagnosed with anxiety, you've tried several meds and it sort of helped, but you still have some anxiety kind of peeking through, might be something to look into, that perhaps maybe your body's just overproducing adrenaline. A lot of the anxiety meds don't actually work on adrenaline. They work on serotonin, which can sometimes be an issue with anxiety, but it's not always. Anyways, so 15-year-old has high cortisol and no period. Yeah. So back to how cortisol will affect the sex hormones. If your body's in a state where it's under chronic stress and it's still pumping out a ton of cortisol, like I said, cortisol is very metabolically expensive. So if the body, for some reason, Tracy, I'm going to use your daughter as an example. Your daughter is pumping out a ton of cortisol. Typically, in most cases, when cortisol is really high, the body will be stealing from one of the other hormones. And the most common hormone that the body will steal from is progesterone, which is the hormone that we talked about that's predominant in the second half of the cycle. So if you're not making a lot of progesterone, it can actually you can stop getting periods. And so in teenagers that are really stressed, or young athletes that kind of overextend, they're not eating enough calories and they're overworking out, their cortisol tends to be high because of the stress factor, but their progesterone and estrogen levels will be low. The body is essentially, in this instance, is robbing Peter to pay Paul. So there's not enough kind of currency or energy to make high cortisol and high progesterone. So if the period has stopped and you have high cortisol, it's just because the body is shunting all of its energy over to cortisol. And so I encourage you guys to start to think about your body like this and all the systems, that it's almost as if your body has a budget, an energy budget. And so, and this is particularly when you're not getting enough rest, because if you're getting enough rest and you're meditating, there's always energy that can come in. But if you're kind of burning the candles from both ends, your body has a limited amount of energy with which it can do things. And that means with which to make hormones, with which to fix bumps and bruises, with which to give you, mental energy. When you're kind of assessing yourself, think about, okay, I'm getting 4 hours of sleep every night. Maybe that's the reason why, some of these other issues. And sometimes our brain doesn't feel tired, but we get low back pain, or, we get migraines, or our sex drive goes down, or anytime you have a symptom, it's really just your body trying to tell you that something's not quite right. And so when I work with patients, I'm always trying to figure out, okay, this person's getting migraines. Let's figure out what's causing the migraines. Because if we can figure that out, in most cases, we can kind of, figure out how to get the body back into balance so it doesn't have the migraines. Yeah. what else, guys? Okay, I talked a little bit about adrenal stuff. So basically, in this year of 2020, I don't care who you are, you've had higher levels of stress this year. Everybody on the planet has had an increased level of stress. And we've been going at this for what, 10 months at this point? So we've been under chronic stress. So most of us probably have some form of adrenal fatigue where our, our cortisol levels might be a little bit low. Now, unless you have a really great meditation, if you're really doing a good job taking care of yourself, that may not be the case for you. And I do know some people that the pandemic has been an incredible blessing. They're working from home, they're exercising, they're cooking, they're taking the time for themselves. And if that's the case, that's awesome. That's so great. But I will say that when it comes to working on any hormone, if you think about that, I want to save more than I spend. That's probably the best thing that you can do to start to kind of slowly heal or balance things. So, if you look at your sleep patterns, and if you're only getting 6 hours of sleep and you think, oh, I could go to bed a half an hour earlier, that's going to improve things. It's not going to be an overnight improvement, but it's going to start to make a difference. Or if you can sneak in a 20-minute nap in the afternoon, or a 20-minute meditation session, or a 5-minute meditation session, anytime that you can rest, it's going to allow your body to build more energy, to build more cortisol, which will then allow the sex hormones to straighten out. It'll allow the thyroid to have more energy. So does that make sense to you guys? Do I see nodding? Am I bored? Is everyone cool?
No, you're not boring at all. This is like, I'm actually getting messages and
Okay,
texts.
good. It's always the weird thing with Zoom. It's hard to tell.
I know, but no, I'm getting a lot of, I don't know why they're not putting it in chats, but I'm getting a ton of messages and texts saying that people are like super interested. So you're doing great.
Awesome. So yeah, I think the what I want you guys to take away from this is to, no matter what you have going on, start to just look at your body. I'm kind of trying to develop this talk about calling your body's like a toddler, or like an 18-month-old that isn't quite talking yet. It doesn't have words to tell you, but it has symptoms, right? And so let's say that you're eating a food every day that your body doesn't really like. We'll take dairy, for example. So the first thing your body might do is you might get a stomach ache, but you think, oh, I really like the cheese, I'm going to keep eating it. And so the body's like, the stomach ache didn't work. Let me try diarrhea. So then the next time you eat cheese, you get diarrhea, and you're like, oh, I'm going to take some Imodium. I'm not going to listen to that. Then the next time you eat cheese, you might throw up. And so the symptoms will keep getting strong. If you keep doing the same thing to the body will, just like a toddler, if the toddler's like, hey, mommy, I want some water. Hey, mommy, I want some water. And the longer you ignore the toddler, eventually they're going to be in a full-blown screaming panic on the floor, which is what happens in the body if you keep ignoring, your little symptoms. So let's take, for example, Jen saying it's the best thing. Your body isn't broken. That's exactly right. Anytime you have a symptom, it is not your body being broken. It is your body trying to tell you what's going on. So I think if you can start to, and again, everyone's body language is a little bit different, but so if you start to kind of recognize what your body's normal is and what's abnormal for you, you can look at, when you get a headache, oh, you know what? I typically get headaches when I don't drink enough water. So tomorrow I'm going to drink more water. Or when you get a migraine, maybe I get migraines when I have too many scents and I'm stressed out and I didn't sleep. There's like a perfect combination. It's my body being like, you need to sleep more, you need to stay away from perfumes, and you need to drink more water, or whatever it is. So, and it takes a while to kind of get to know a lot of these symptoms, but the first step is to kind of start recognizing what's normal for your system, what's not. And then you can start to look at, okay, what am I putting into my body every day? Am I putting in something, am I eating Chick-fil-A 4 times a week? And maybe that's contributing to fibroids or bad cramps. And I will say that a lot of PMS symptoms, I kind of touched on this earlier about the fibroids, but a lot of PMS symptoms can also be from elevated estrogen in that second half of the cycle. So you might not have fibroids, but maybe you have really bad headaches, or you have really, really heavy periods, or really bad cramping, or really big clots. Those can all be signs of too much estrogen. And so that can be, again, because you're consuming too much estrogen, or because your liver is not breaking it down. So it's really important to look at, again, what's going in your body, what's going on in your body when it comes to hormone stuff. And then I will say it's good for you to have, for you to understand what's going on in your body. If you don't have a practitioner that listens to you, I think that's the number one most important thing, whether it's a primary care or a naturopath or you need someone who's going to take the time to listen to all of your symptoms, and can maybe think about it and kind of throw some ideas back at you and know what to test for. I think it's important. I think a lot of times the patients that I see, if their doctor had maybe spent 20 extra minutes listening to their symptoms, they might have actually checked them for celiac disease, or for, the patient's like, I just started eating bagels all the time and now I've been getting diarrhea. And the doctor's like, oh, you're fine, go get a colon. And they miss, I see this missed all the time. I see celiac being missed. I see thyroid issues being missed. So I think just make sure you have a practitioner that you're working with that listens to you, and that, will kind of go the extra step ordering tests for you, because sometimes we can tell what's going on in the body from symptoms, but sometimes running tests is helpful, to kind of know, like, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive. If you're getting symptoms every month on day 23 of your cycle, you get a migraine, or you get cramping, or you feel like you want to kill someone, or you have really crazy mood changes, you need to make sure you're having your hormones checked on the day that you're having symptoms. So, and this is a common thing that I see, is that women will come in and they'll say, yeah, I had my labs done and my doctors told me my hormones were normal. And we'll start talking more, and I'll say, okay, well, tell me about your symptoms. Well, my symptoms usually start around day 23 of my cycle, and I get this, 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 and this. And I say, okay, I look at their labs and I'm like, well, when were these tested? Oh, they were tested on day 2 of my cycle. I'm like, okay, well, on day 2 of your cycle, are you having symptoms? And they're like, no. So you need to make sure that, hormones in particular, that you're getting tested at the appropriate time of the month. If we think it's hormone related. And also thyroid can change, and stress hormones can change in women that are cycling, because, like I said, I like to use this analogy. I like analogies a lot, but as a woman, your hormones and all the stuff we've been talking about, there are more hormones than I've touched on today. There are a lot of them, and they almost act in a ballet. So everyone in the ballet has a specific role, they have a specific costume, they have a specific time they're supposed to come on stage, right? And if one of those hormones wears the wrong costume or runs across the stage at the wrong time, the whole ballet is going to be a mess, right? So, we have, let's say that, the first half of the ballet, everything's fine. But then the second half of the ballet, the main, whatever person goes and runs and messes things up. If you had just watched the first half, you might not think there was any issue. But if you had watched the whole thing, you might know, okay, you know what, actually, like, we need to make sure we look at what's going on with that person. Why didn't they show up, or why are they wearing the wrong costume, or, get the point with the metaphor. But I think there's a lot of different things. And why I kind of went into the medicine that I went into is I wanted a training that kind of taught me how to look at the body from a whole, and to look at all of the different pictures, or the larger view. And that was my point. Find a practitioner that will do that won't just be like, oh yeah, your TSH is within the range, you're totally fine, you must just be a woman and you're crazy. And so yeah, does someone have a question? I see Angela's up on the screen. I think does anyone else have questions or comments, or?
So, with the whole like sex drive thing, how do we know when that's a hormone thing and when, I don't know, we're like just too busy, or just like it doesn't matter to us anymore?
So if you are human, you should have some sort of a sex drive. You don't have to be thinking about it all the time. Obviously when you're busy and you're in fight flight mode, you're not going to be thinking about sex, because your sex hormones, and you can't get sexually aroused when you're in fight flight. You have to be in the relaxed mode. So most women, you're not going to be able to get sexually aroused when you're really busy. So you have to have, and so I think it's a telling thing when you're relaxed. If you go on vacation and you have no sex drive, then that's usually like something's probably off with your hormones. If you're like, yeah, even when I'm relaxed, or even when things are, but if you're just busy, that's pretty normal. It's almost impossible it's not impossible, but it's normal for you to not have a sex drive when you're super busy and in stress mode. But when you do relax, you still aren't having any desire, then there's probably something off in the hormones. And I say that in a way that, not that there's something wrong with you, but there's something that could be fixed. Like, we could balance that to like bring that level back up. What I often recommend for, if you're struggling with that, one of the best ways to start, if you're in a relationship, and, because this can also be like a tricky topic if you're married or with a partner and your sex drive's low and the partner's is high, it can start to become a point of contention, which can cause stress. And then it's like a whole thing. But I will often recommend like starting with making out, or just like skin to skin contact. If you remember, you guys are all moms. Like, if you remember when you had a newborn baby, and if you're having trouble nursing, your naked infant on your chest, it'll increase your oxytocin levels. And oxytocin is the hormone that we release when we have an orgasm, and it will help improve sex drive. So the more you spend hugging, and I feel like 2020 has been an extra difficult time because we're not hugging strangers, we're not hugging our friends, but if you live with someone, whether it's your child or your partner, you don't necessarily need to be having sex, but the more skin to skin contact you can have. So like lay naked in bed together and touch each other, or give each other a massage, or make out a little bit, or it doesn't have to be, intercourse, but do something like that will actually start to improve your drive. So if that's something like, that's a really simple thing you can do without, taking a supplement or changing your diet, or just spend time in contact with other humans, because that will raise your oxytocin levels and will help improve sex drive. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I know I kind of went further on.
No,
your
it makes
question,
total sense, because I think I was joking with a friend too the other day. I was like, I think 2020 has made me realize that maybe I'm like, I don't know, asexual. And she was like,
no, I think it's
true.
It's a pretty normal complaint this year. Everyone's like, yeah, I just don't feel like having sex. But the flip side is that sex actually, or touching humans, or anything that improves your oxytocin or relaxes you, is going to help you build more. It's going to help you relax more. Like, I feel like if I could teach, and I need to teach this myself, but you have to practice relaxing this year. And if you're a busy mom, it's like relaxing is foreign to you. You're like, wait, why would I lay down in the middle of the day? I have a million things to do, and your body almost doesn't know how to. So I'm often with my patients, I'm like, you need to practice this every day. You need to lay down for 10 minutes and don't do anything. Like, listen to music, close your eyes, do not read, don't look at your phone, just relax, just be. And the more you can do that, the easier it will become. And that in itself will help your sex drive. But my point was that any sort of sexual intimacy is healing for your body. It's really healing. So when you're in that relaxed or parasympathetic mode, that's when your body does its healing. So the more time you can spend in that, no matter what you're trying to deal with, the faster you will overcome, whether it's arthritis or migraines or fibroids or anything that you're trying to, get better in your body. The more time you spend in parasympathetic, the faster that will happen. If you're constantly in the fight or flight, the body that's not when the body heals. The body is too concerned about protecting itself. It's not going to fix things. Does that make sense? Someone asked, do I see teens? I do see teens, yes. And teens, I feel like, everyone's had a rough year of 2020, but my heart's going out to all the teens out there that are home, schooling from. This is a tough year.
My daughter keeps saying, I can't wait to be a teenager, and I'm like, oh no, you can. Being a teenager sucks. Like, it's awful.
Yeah, it's a special time. So what else? Any other questions?
What about hormones?
If you guys,
sorry, I don't know how to change the background.
That's okay.
What about hormones after delivery? My daughter will be 5 months on the 9th, and I just feel like, part of, I guess, her being so little is exhaustion, because I still get up with her in the middle of the night. But even when I do get a full night's sleep, I just feel drained by 11 a.m. And I don't know how much of that can be.
Are you still nursing?
I'm relactating right now. So I stopped pumping.
Oh, okay.
And for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I started pumping again because she didn't do well with formula.
Gotcha. So, you're kind of in that phase is this your first?
Third.
Okay. So you've had a couple, but I think, so in third, what was your exact question? You're asking how hormones affect it? Like what's going on with your hormones?
So when do hormones kind of regulate after having a baby? Because it's been different with the other two.
Yeah. Well, and this year's been a little bit, again, anyone who's had a baby this year, there's been some extra stuff going on, but
they never regulate.
They do. They can regulate.
No,
your body
they
will never be the same.
They never
do. What I was saying about you just get a new normal. So what I said, what your normal was before kids, that was your normal. You should get, or you can get to a new normal post kids. It's probably not the same hormonal picture that you had prior to kids. Your body's different now. You have little people living, so, and it can vary with pregnancy, but while you're still nursing, your prolactin levels are high, and that will affect your levels of estrogen and progesterone, which will also affect your cortisol levels. So it's hard for the hormones to rebalance while you're still nursing.
Okay.
So they can, but then we also have to think about it back to that back to my saving and spending analogy. When you're nursing a baby, you're giving out all of your, most of your nutrients. So of course you're going to be more tired when you're nursing. So when you're a nursing mom, whether you're 2 months postpartum or a year postpartum, you need the calorie consumption and the energy consumption for two. So it's and I know this is, I'm like, I have 2 little ones. It's almost impossible to say, oh, go do more self-care, like go take baths and do this. But I think you need to start to find some small moments in the day that you can either meditate or lay down or get an extra 10 minutes of sleep or something. And again, as a mom, it's not like you're going to be able to find 2 hours to go, take a nap every day, or if you can, that's awesome.
Yeah,
but I think if you can find the small pieces.
My husband just got us a membership for the Y since everything kind of started normalizing. So I started going on Saturdays for like water fitness class. So I would be out of the house for like an hour and a half maybe. And I do notice that on those days, everything is just so much easier. Even emotionally, I don't have to invest so much into like trying to
so this is a perfect example of knowing your body, right? Okay, when you exercise, you feel much better, right? So maybe on the days that you can't go to the Y, I was just having this conversation with myself this morning. I didn't exercise for the past 3 days, and my one daughter normally goes to preschool, but she was home this week, virtual schooling, and I love my daughter, but I wanted to scream. I just was like, I can't handle this. And then I realized, I haven't exercised since Tuesday. And for me, I just need at least 10 minutes of some sort of exercise, and that changes my mood for the rest of the day. Some people need more, but if you know that about yourself, you can't go to the Y, put a video on while your kids are around, do something that, because exercise can really help with the mental stuff. And then you don't have because there's all types of stressors, right? There's regular stress, there's work stress, there's kid stress, but then there's also our brain's thoughts can create stress. So when you're like, if you haven't exercised and you're in that negative thought mode, that's going to cause stress, which is going to make it harder for your hormones to rebalance. So if you know that exercise helps your brain, that would be something that you'd probably want to try to prioritize. That will help your hormones come back into balance faster. Does that make sense? And I know I probably didn't answer all of your question, but does that a little bit?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Who else? Anybody else? Okay, you're welcome.
Someone messaged me directly instead of the group, but I thought it was a great idea. If you could do another video for teens, for hormones and stress for teens, I might be able to talk my 17-year-old ending. I think it would be a lot of good information for them.
Well, so it's kind of all the same information. I'm happy to do that, but I was gonna say, if you go to my website, I have a free stress webinar you can download, and it's applicable to teens, females, adults, it's everyone. It's about 50 minutes long. I talk a lot about the cortisol stuff and then some different simple ways to change that, but I'm happy to, we can schedule it, or I can just do a video on, if you don't follow me on social media, go to Instagram, Dr. Kinney. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I do videos periodically, but I can make a note to do something on teens and stress.
Podcast and everything on your website too?
Yeah, my podcast launches in January next month. So so if you follow me, what'd you say?
Yes,
because we want all of that information.
Yeah, so if you guys go to my website, you can get on my email list, and then you'll get info about the podcast and stuff. But if you follow me on social media, you won't miss it. It'll be on Facebook and all that stuff. But video for teens and stress, I can try to schedule that sometime in the next couple of weeks. I'll probably do it on Instagram. If your teens are on Instagram, you can just tell them to go and watch it. But yeah, I think every population right now is dealing with some sort of impact from stress, but the teenage population, I've seen a lot of teens this year that are struggling. It's a tough time. So yeah. Oh, thank you, Jillian, for you typing that in. Yeah, if you guys go there, there's information, and you should be able to find my social stuff and everything. And yeah, and if you have questions about specific health stuff, like I said, call my office. You can schedule a free 15-minute consult. I'm happy to chat with you about that. Or if I'm not the right fit for you, I can help find someone that is. I don't take insurance. I work with a primary care physician, Dr. Molly Sauerwein, She does take insurance, and she and I chat regularly, and we share a lot of patients, and I'm kind of training her in a lot of stuff that I teach. So if you're looking for a primary care, I think she's taking new patients. If she isn't, some of her nurse practitioners that work with her are. But I think, like, again, it's really important to have a practitioner who will listen to you, you know, who's in your corner, who will take the extra time to kind of go the extra mile and figure what's going on. But that also, you kind of need to start with doing your own work and figuring out, oh, you know what, like, this is off for me, or this is, you know, and paying attention to your body as if it were your toddler. So like, treat your body as if, you know, as something that, you know, it's another thing you're taking care of, but it's the most important thing you're taking care of. You know, as moms, we have a million things to take care of. And I think we often put ourselves last, right? It's like, we've got the house, the kids, the, you know, all the things that we all do all day long. And then it's like, at the end of the day, there's like this much left for you. And then your body starts screaming, things start breaking. So, but I find if you are able to just shift 10% of your energy back to you, you're going to feel better, and you'll probably, you know, you'll end up having more time for yourself because you'll do a better job of getting all the things done. You know what I mean? Like, the days that I have almost meditated every day for a full year. I'm really proud of that. I'm like at 356 days, only like it's between 5 to 15 minutes, but the days that I meditate longer, I'm so much more productive. I get so many more things done, and I end up having extra time. It's this weird phenomenon, but some mornings I meditate for like a minute, and those are usually the days where, you know, I really just did the minute because I didn't want to miss the day. I didn't want to lose my streak. But those days I'm like, God, I didn't get anything done, or my brain. So, you know, if you're able to build in a small, for you, for some people, that's sitting down with your morning coffee and reading for 10 minutes, or saying a prayer, or reading devotionals, or, you know, whatever it is, or 10 minutes of yoga, or something that's just for you. And I think it's really good to do that at the beginning of the day, because it kind of starts your day, and you kind of start woken up and things are going to come and bother you. But it's like the practice of trying not to try to put yourself first, so that you can be used for others and for yourself. So anyways, well, thank you guys for having me. This was fun.
Thank you. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. This is like so informative.
You're very welcome.
Awesome.
And yeah, so I'm here if you guys need me. And go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I dropped your website there, so that everyone has that.
Thank you.
And yeah, do you have a YouTube channel at all?
I haven't done that. I don't have
That's okay.
YouTube.
That's okay.
But I have a bunch of Instagram videos and Facebook videos.
Yeah,
I probably should get YouTube. I should put my person on that.
Share? Yeah, I think you should. I think I can share Instagram videos too.
I might.
I think
I might have some of my videos might be on Instagram or on YouTube, but it's not a medium that I'm consistent on.
No, I was just gonna say if you have a lot of videos on Instagram, I think I can share them to our Facebook page, but I'm not positive. But I'll try. But either way.
A lot of them are. I have some older videos on Facebook that you can probably go find. And again, if you guys have a topic like that, you know, message me, message me or comment on my Facebook stuff and say, hey, I want, you know, can you do a video about this? Like, I love teaching about this stuff. I want you guys to have the best, you know, all the information that you need to get yourselves well. So message me if there's a specific topic that you're interested in.
Awesome.
I'm happy to do a video. Or yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Everyone have a great weekend. Do something for yourself this weekend. Just for you.
Bye.